At my most embarrassing moment, Quentin married me. Everyone said that he married me just to spite my younger sister, but after he died in a car accident, he left all his inheritance to me, and a voice recorder, gently clicking it on, it was his hoarse and deep voice. He said, "Tina, can you like me a little bit too?" After many years, I finally glimpsed his majestic and grand love hidden under the ice. When I opened my eyes again, I was reborn. My adoptive mother was holding my hand and saying, "Ian, will you go to prison for your younger sister?" Before I was 16, I was the pampered eldest lady of the Song family, loved by my parents and favored by my elder brother. I lived a carefree life, but when Ruth came to the door with a DNA test, I then realized that a nurse had mistakenly switched the babies back then. She is the real daughter of the family, while I am just a bad bird occupying the magpie's nest. I had originally planned to leave, but my biological parents had already passed away, and Mother Song couldn't bear to see me become an orphan. So she officially adopted me. My adoptive parents were very kind to me. My elder brother didn't neglect me, and Ruth never made things difficult for me. I was grateful. But later, Ruth had an argument with a fellow actor backstage at the filming set. During the argument, that person fell down the stairs and became a vegetative state. There was no surveillance at that time, but someone had to take the blame, and I was just present at that time and witnessed everything. My adoptive mother came to me with tears in her eyes and begged me to take the blame for Ruth. Ruth knelt in front of me, kowtowed, slapped herself, and said sorry to me. The whole family cried heartbrokenly. So I nodded. I took the blame for her, went to prison, and suffered a lot. At first, the Song family would still come to see me, shedding tears of guilt or apology, but gradually no one came anymore. Once, during an activity organized in prison, the prison warden asked us about our plans after being released. I thought for a long time before carefully writing down, "After being released from prison, I want to see Mom and Dad once." When the cellmate next to me saw it, she laughed at me for writing something so simple. "Dad and Mom will definitely come to pick you up and take you back. How could you not see them?" I smiled and didn't refute. But when I was really released from prison, no one came. Only Father Song's assistant sent me to the airport and then gave me a large sum of money. He didn't say anything, but I understood everything. Dad and Mom don't want me anymore. The Song family has abandoned me. I didn't take the money. It's not because of being noble. It's just that I don't want to owe the Song family anymore. The Song family raised me for more than 20 years. I went to prison for 5 years for their daughter. We are even. I rented a house and ran around until exhausted before finding a job that didn't mind my criminal record. But just after working for half a month, I was fired. I asked repeatedly. Only then did the manager hesitantly say, "You have provoked someone you shouldn't have provoked." I was stunned for a moment and then couldn't say anything. Someone you shouldn't have provoked. Except for the Song family. Who else could it be? That day, I walked onto the street with my bag. It was drizzling. The cool rain fell on my face and body along with the wind. When passing by the central square, Ruth's live broadcast was playing on the big screen. I stopped and looked up. On the award stage, she was extremely beautiful and charming, freely showing off her beauty. When the camera panned back, I saw Father Song and Mother Song looking at her with tears in their eyes. As if looking at a rare treasure, their eyes were full of love. I don't know why, but suddenly I remembered during the first visit in prison. Looking at me who had lost weight rapidly, my adoptive mother promised me with tears, "Ian, after you are released from prison, Mom will support you for the rest of your life. Mom loves you." But 2 years ago, when I saw her for the last time, there was only a faint sense of guilt in her expression. She said, "Tina, Ruth is going to be engaged to Quentin. She likes him very much. After you are released from prison, can you leave here so that the He family won't find out about your past?" Quentin. The crown prince of the He family. There are TVs in prison. Occasionally, I would hear about the deep love between Ruth and Quentin. It is said that Quentin is a famous playboy in the circle, but for Ruth, he has settled down. He stepped into the entertainment industry that he despised the most, paved the way for her, provided her with contacts and resources, and personally presented awards to her. I occasionally envy Ruth. I envy her for being loved by her parents and favored by her boyfriend. In just 20-some years, she has achieved success in both career and love. Unlike me. No parents, no career, no lover. Also, no one loves me. As for marrying Quentin, it was originally an accident. After being fired, I returned to my hometown and became a waitress in a restaurant. It was quite busy. I don't know how he got the news. When he found me, I was serving beer to customers. The man had drunk too much and his hands and feet were not clean. I frowned and slapped him. The man became furious and kicked me to the ground. Bottles and food were spilled all over me. It was very hot. The man was still not satisfied and was still swearing and about to hit me again. But in the next second, there was no sound. I opened my eyes and was looking directly into the man's bright eyes like stars. Quentin curved his lips and smiled, but it was lazy and without much sincerity. "Tina, you really are here." I got up, shook off the food scraps on my body, nodded, and then wanted to walk around him and leave. But just after taking 2 steps, I heard his voice ring out behind me, "Seeing you in such a mess, do you want to marry me?" I looked back at him in surprise. "Are you finally crazy?" Seriously. Quentin took a look at me. His eyes were dark and there was no trace of emotion. But when he spoke, he was serious. "To tell you the truth, I was dumped by your younger sister and I'm in a bad mood. And you were forced into this situation by the Song family. We can barely be considered a victim alliance." The street lamp was dim and flickered twice before announcing its breakdown. I couldn't see his face clearly. I could only hear him chuckle. The cigarette in his mouth was emitting a glimmer of red light. "Anyway, you have nothing now. Marrying me, you won't lose anything." "What are you afraid of?" I thought about it. Didn't say anything. He then waited quietly for me until the cool breeze blew. I subconsciously shrank. Quentin took off his high-end custom-made windbreaker and put it on my shoulders. In an instant, all I could smell was his faint tobacco fragrance. I said, "Okay." When the news of our marriage spread, everyone was shocked. They all said that Quentin married me just to spite Ruth. At the wedding, when Quentin said he was willing, I noticed Ruth crying with red eyes under the stage and leaving the scene. I glanced at the man, but he just smiled and didn't even look at her. As if he had never loved before. As if he really didn't care. After marriage, Quentin was very good to me. He arranged a job as a secretary for me and we were always together. When I asked him the reason, he just smiled frivolously. "I'm not to leave a beautiful woman at home. I'm afraid a thief will steal you away." If I lose my innocence, wouldn't it be a big loss? I laughed at his lack of seriousness. And I was too lazy to argue with him. During the years in prison, I suffered so much that my body couldn't stand anymore. An ordinary cold or cough for others would turn into a serious illness for me. Quentin invited famous doctors from all over to treat me and I got better. In front of the hospital bed, he held my hand, serious and devout. "Tina, I bought you. Your life is mine. You can't die before me." Childish words. But looking at his faintly bitter eyes, I finally nodded. I didn't understand why he was sad. But I had long learned not to ask and not to disturb. "Okay. Live to old age together." But in the end, the one who didn't keep the promise was not me, but Quentin. "Madam, Mr. He died in a major car accident at 3 o'clock in the early morning yesterday. Rescue was ineffective. Please accept my condolences." Pushing open the morgue, Quentin's parents were already crying uncontrollably. Looking at Quentin's pale and colorless face, I just thought secretly in my heart, heaven favors him, giving him family background, appearance and ability that others can't reach. But why is it so stingy as to only give him 34 years? What a pity! What a pity! Quentin's funeral was arranged by me. In the 5 years after marriage, many people still didn't think highly of our marriage. Ruth even hated me because of love and was always waiting to see my joke. But no one expected that Quentin also gave all his property and shares to me. Quentin's parents had no objections. Only when they left, their backs were hunched and they were no longer as energetic as before. A week later, Quentin's lawyer Chen brought me the inheritance transfer document. Before leaving, he handed me a voice recorder. This is Mr. He's relic. It has been repaired. I think you should need it, madam. 6 Tina. In the voice recorder, the man's voice was clear and cold, mixed with a trace of electrical current, sounding even more hoarse. I married you not because of spiting Ruth. I did it because I like you. I was stunned for a moment, but my heart was completely calm. As if I had expected it. Quentin chuckled softly. Perhaps you have already forgotten. We have met before. At that time, you were the high mountain flower in school but extremely intelligent. You were the favorite of the teachers. My mentor would always mention you. After every chat with your teacher, he would always say to me angrily, Quentin, I hate you now. Stay away from me. He imitated his mentor's tone, looking extremely cute. I subconsciously laughed. But in the next moment, I slowly stopped. Quentin was still talking. I hated you very much at that time, but I couldn't help but keep my eyes on you. I seemed to be a bit of a masochist, hee hee. But later, you were imprisoned for so-called intentional injury. I didn't believe it. I had to find out the truth. But unfortunately, the Song family cleaned up all the clues very thoroughly. So I focused on Ruth. So it turns out, Quentin and Ruth's love that everyone praised was just an excuse for him to find out the truth about my imprisonment. But Quentin didn't expect that Ruth's mouth was tight and unyielding. But he finally found some clues. I suddenly remembered that before marriage, Quentin was extremely excited one day and asked me, Ian, do you want to take revenge? Don't want to. I shook my head. We are even. After many years. I finally understood that on that day, he probably had found out the truth. He investigated the truth for me. And for me, he hid the truth. It turns out that everything is because of me. The emotions in my eyes trembled violently, and my whole body couldn't help trembling non-stop. Tears fell drop by drop. But then again, my acting must be extremely, extremely good. So I deceived everyone and also deceived you. Do you know how cute your expression and eyes were when I went to find you and asked you to marry me? Forget it, I talked too much again. In fact, I always wanted to ask you. Quentin coughed. He was always cold and proud. At this moment, his voice was rarely shy like a teenager. Tina, can you also like me a little bit? I may not hear it in this life. Then in the next life, when I come to find you, you can tell me. Accompanied by the sharp screech of a vehicle braking suddenly and the noisy screams of the crowd, I clearly heard his last words. He said, Tina, I really like you so much. There was even a hint of a smile in the ending. The suppressed emotions suddenly collapsed at this moment. In the empty living room, there were still lilies that Quentin had brought home a few days ago on the table. I have always liked lilies. So he presented them to me like showing off a treasure. Ian, isn't it fragrant? I picked them one by one specially. Ian, I will change the flowers at home from now on. At that time, the fine smile in his eyes was like gentle starlight. How could I say no? But the person who made the promise lied. He left first. And also took away the last bit of vitality of the lilies. The warm sun fell on my shoulder through the floor-to-ceiling windows. I raised my hand to touch it, but only felt cold. As of today, I finally glimpsed Quentin's majestic and hidden love hidden under the ice. But it seems a bit too late. Lawyer Chen saw Mrs. He again a week later. He came to get the inheritance transfer document. He had followed Quentin for many years and had seen Mrs. He many times. In his impression, Mrs. He is always decent and gentle with a smile. Like a jade Buddha on a pedestal, she looks on indifferently at the turmoil of the world. Not happy, not angry, not moved. Even when she learned of Quentin's death, she just paused for a moment without even her eyes turning red. Quentin was so good to her. But he didn't get a single tear from her. Lawyer Chen once felt it was not worth it for Quentin in his heart. But this time, as soon as he entered the living room, Lawyer Chen actually saw Mrs. He holding several bunches of already withered lilies. Her face was paler than falling snow. Seeing him, she didn't even have a polite smile. She just stated coldly, Lawyer Chen, donate his property to the orphanage. I don't want his. There was no room for negotiation. Before leaving, Lawyer Chen couldn't help but turn back and ask, "Madam, did you ever like Mr. He?" And Mrs. He just smiled but didn't answer. Many years later, Mrs. He has become a philanthropist that the media are competing to report on. She has sponsored countless orphans. Seeing her again was in front of her sickbed. She was clearly only 45 years old but already had white hair all over her head. At that time, she was looking out of the window as if she saw someone. There was a bit of a girlish coquettishness on her face. She said, like, "I have always liked it very much. Ian, Mom begs you to save your younger sister. Your younger sister is so young. How can she go to prison? Sister, I really know I was wrong. I didn't mean it. I don't want to go to prison. I am a big star. If I go to prison, my whole life will be ruined." When I woke up from the darkness, what I heard in my ears was a noisy crying and shouting voice. My head hurt badly. Slowly opening my eyes, I could see everything in front of me. Ruth was kneeling on the ground, crying and lying on the ground. Father Song held her in his arms with heartache and comforted her. And Mother Song was firmly holding my hand. There were tears all over her face. When she spoke, there was a hint of choking but she was very serious. "Ian, will you go to prison for your younger sister?" I looked at her silently as if it was an encouragement. Mother Song gritted her teeth and said, "Ian, there is no surveillance at the scene. Only you and Aru are present. What the paparazzi took is only a back view. They can't recognize anything. As long as you admit that you accidentally pushed Hannah, the police won't find anything. Don't worry. After you enter prison, Mom will definitely take care of everything for you and won't let you suffer. After you are released from prison, the Song family will support you for the rest of your life." Well, she said the same thing in my previous life. But the shelf life is only 1 year. After the promise expired, I was driven out of the single room. And because I was beautiful, I was bullied and retaliated by some people. Beating, scolding, and even poisoning. It was extremely miserable. But no one came to see me until I was poisoned by nitrite in the food and was released on medical parole. Mother Song came to my hospital bed. On that day, she glanced down at me condescendingly. There was a hint of impatience on her face. After all, it's a prison, not a holiday resort. It's inevitable to suffer a little. Tina, don't be so delicate. Aru is going on a business trip abroad recently. I probably won't have time to see you in the future." After that, I never saw her again. Looking at Mother Song's face full of tears now, I believe that what she said at this moment is all from the heart. But true hearts can change. My guilt and self-blame towards me eventually turned into deeper fear as time passed. I gently broke free from Mother Song's hand and said, "No." Mother Song was stunned. Probably she didn't expect that I, who had always been as obedient as a sheep, would refuse her, but when I spoke again, it was serious and firm. "Mom, I am grateful that you have raised me for 20 years. But I don't want to ruin my life because of this. You can call me selfish or a white-eyed wolf. But I don't want to take the blame for her. I was reborn not to repeat the same mistakes. In my previous life, Quentin saved me. In this life, I want to save myself." Then walked to Quentin's side clearly and decently. My refusal made Father Song furious. He scolded me for being ungrateful. After enjoying the benefits of the Song family for so many years, I refused to pay even a little. Mother Song and Ruth cried heartbrokenly. But seeing that I was unyielding, they were worried that I would run away. So they locked me in the room. Only my elder brother Sonny remained silent from beginning to end. Just like in my previous life. Mother Song took away my mobile phone but didn't know that I had a spare phone. Turning on the phone, yesterday, the news that Hannah was accidentally seriously injured and became a vegetative state has already been on the hot list. There are very few clues. Only the paparazzi took a blurry back view photo. And his sentence, Ruth and her elder sister were alone with Hannah for a period of time. The police are probably on their way. I flipped through the spare phone and subconsciously dialed a phone number. Looking at the familiar numbers, I was stunned for a moment, but in the end I didn't dial a dot. I don't know why. There is always some fear in my heart. I am afraid that the person on the other end of the phone is not the person I am familiar with. I am even more afraid that when I wake up from the dream, I will never see him again. In my previous life, after Quentin died, I regularly paid the phone bill for his mobile phone. In the dead of night, I sent him text messages. Either about daily life or complaining. I would always get a reply, Ian, I am here. It was his automatic reply. Said by him before he died, you said this person, how could he be so hateful? Hateful enough to hold my heart and make me unable to forget him for 10, 20, or 30 years. I got up, lifted the curtain. The warm sun fell on me through the window, bringing a hint of coolness. I saw the police outside the door. And Father Song's veiled glance. With trembling hands, I finally sent a text message. Quentin, will you come and save me? Mother Song originally wanted to stop me from showing up and then confirm my guilt. But I slapped the door loudly. Facing the police's inquiries, I ignored Mother Song's pleading gaze and replied one by one. In my previous life, the case could be successfully convicted and closed because I admitted my crime voluntarily and even erased the alibi myself. But in this life, I won't be so stupid. The kindness of those 20-some years in the past has already been exhausted in my previous life. Not hating is already my limit. Compared to my calmness and composure, Ruth was even more flustered and guilty. Who is right and who is wrong? It is obvious at a glance. When Ruth was taken away, Mother Song cried hysterically. Father Song had a gloomy face. Occasionally, the glances he threw at me were like those of an enemy who killed his daughter. He wished he could tear me to pieces. The two followed Ruth and left. I looked at them quietly without saying a word. At this time, Sonny walked to my side and said in a deep voice, the Song family can't tolerate you anymore, Ian. You leave here. I looked up at him and paused for a second on his red eyes. Don't you blame me? Sonny was stunned. He didn't answer yes or no. He just looked into the distance at the direction of the police car. His tone was as light as a breeze. Ian, you are also my younger sister. He said this in his previous life too. He advised me not to take the blame. When I asked him why, he looked down at me. His gaze was like the wind and rain, gentle and pitying. You are also my younger sister. However, I disappointed his advice. But this time, I decided to listen to him. Mother Song and Father Song probably hate me deeply now. Staying here will only cause more troubles. I said seriously, brother, take care. Sonny curved his mouth. His voice was hoarse. Ian, live your own life well. After packing my luggage, I walked out of the Song family. Look ahead. The wind blew, rolling up fallen leaves everywhere. At this moment, the sun fell on me, warm. And at this time, a figure suddenly rushed in front of me. His tone was extremely flustered. Tina, I'm here. Are you okay? I was stunned for a moment. Looked up. The man was wearing a black shirt. His figure was tall and straight. His eyes were deep. The whole person was bathed in the morning sun. It was as if he was standing in the light. His handsome face, which was both elegant and charming, looked lazy and careless. But at this moment, his face was slightly pale. He looked at me nervously. Only when he saw that I was unharmed did his expression relax. His gaze paused for 2 seconds on my suitcase. When he spoke again, he was a bit hesitant. Tina, did you run away from home? It was Quentin. To be precise, it was a much younger Quentin. Past memories quickly flashed through my mind. There was him looking at me gently, yawning lazily, and holding my hand walking into marriage step by step. Finally, it was fixed on that evening when we first met. He seemed lazy but actually secretly clenched his hand and asked me, Tina, will you marry me? At this moment, my heart was beating fast. My eyes were reluctant to leave the man for a moment. Until he widened his eyes in panic and exclaimed, Tina, why are you crying? Who bullied you? Am I crying? Why am I crying? Seeing him again, I should be happy. But the emotions accumulated in my heart in my previous life all turned into tears and flowed out from my heart. Tears couldn't be stopped. I cry. Quentin then quietly accompanied me. After a long time, he pulled me into his arms. His voice was low, with a hint of helpless doting, as if coaxing a beloved child. Ian, don't cry anymore. Who bullied you? I'll help you take revenge, okay? No. I tightened his cuff and shook my head. No revenge. In this life, I just want to be with you well. Think about nothing else. I followed Quentin back to his apartment. Deserted. It's his style. In my previous life, after Quentin died, I lived here for a long time. It was kind of remembrance. It was also like reminiscing. I can't tell. I was already familiar with the layout here. But I didn't notice that when I skillfully walked to the deepest part, turned a corner, pushed the door open, and walked into the bathroom, Quentin's gaze darkened for a moment. Looking at myself in the mirror with red and swollen eyes and a disheveled appearance. I gently sighed. I felt a bit ashamed. I had clearly made up my mind to face Quentin decently. But every time we meet, I am always so embarrassed. But it doesn't matter. Quentin loves me so much. He won't dislike me. Definitely not. This is the thing I am most certain and confident about in this life. When I walked out of the bathroom, Quentin was leaning against the door waiting for me. He asked me, "Why are you crying?" I frankly told him everything that had just happened. There is nothing to hide between him and me. After listening, Quentin was stunned for a moment. So, the Song family wants you to take the blame? I nodded, but I refused. This matter won't end so simply. Although Hannah is seriously injured and unconscious, and there is no substantial evidence, we can only wait for her to wake up to take the blame. Even if Ruth is now considered highly suspicious by the police, but you are not without suspicion either. The more he spoke, the more gloomy his face became. I suddenly interrupted him. Quentin, I'm a little hungry. His gaze paused and fell on me. Seeing that my eyes were clear and there was not a trace of nervousness, he helplessly sighed, I'll make it. I nodded. In my previous life, I had a very serious stomach problem. Quentin specially learned medicinal cuisine and cooked by himself every day. He is very good at cooking. I used to think he would know cooking. But at this moment, seeing the lumpy noodles he served, I suddenly realized that Quentin, a young master, has always been served by others. How could he know how to cook at the beginning? He learned it for me. Always for me. I picked up the chopsticks and took a bite. It was quite salty. But Quentin was looking at me expectantly. Is it delicious? There were fine stars floating in his eyes. Extremely beautiful. Just like the man in my memory who asked me if I liked him with a smile. I lowered my head, suppressing the sour emotions, and nodded heavily. It's delicious. Also, I like it very much. In the end, that bowl of noodles was thrown into the trash can. Because I cried, Quentin thought it was because it was unpalatable and I cried. So he picked up the chopsticks and tasted it. Then, in the next second, it went into the trash can. He frowned, looking dissatisfied. I also want to cry. Why is it so unpalatable? Very cute. It made me laugh, dissipating the gloom between my brows. I encouraged, it doesn't matter. In the future, your cooking must be very delicious. Why? I smiled, because I am your only diner in the future. The man's eyes flickered. His eyes looked thoughtful and showed an unfathomable look. He said in a deep voice, Tina, who are you to me in the future? I was stunned for a moment. Looking up at him, I met his dark eyes, confident and determined. He guessed it. Yes. He is always so smart. Perhaps it is. I paused for a moment before slowly saying, lover. Lover. People who love each other. I thought Quentin might be stunned or frown and ask. But he relaxed his expression, the corners of his eyes curved slightly, and the corners of his lips rose. Shedding his casualness, he looked extremely sincere. He said, then it's good. Then it's good. Looking at the tear mole on his eye that trembled with his smile, I suddenly wanted to taste what it tasted like. When I thought of it, I did it. I raised my foot and kissed it. In his astonished gaze, I smiled brightly. Quentin, I like you so much. I forgot to tell you in my previous life. In this life, I'll tell you. Like you. Always liked you very much. Before going to bed, Quentin covered me with a quilt. If you are afraid, call me. I'll come right away. Before leaving, he also put the amulet he wore on his neck in my palm. I know this. When Quentin was weak as a child, Mrs. He begged for this amulet for him. Protect him as he grows up. Now, he also uses this to protect my safety. I held the jade pendant. My heart was beating up and down. My cheeks were even more scalding. Until Quentin slowly walked out and closed the door. Only then did I suddenly realize that my face was a bit sore. I touched the corner of my mouth and found that I had been smiling. My heart was also full. Quentin is always like this. Seeming like a playboy and never taking anything to heart. In fact, he is the most careful and gentle person. And this night, I didn't fall asleep until midnight. A little excited and a little scared. Looking at the mobile phone placed beside the pillow, I thought for a while. I wonder if Quentin has fallen asleep now. Calling is a bit afraid of disturbing him. It's better to send a text message. Asleep? Just after sending it, I felt it was a bit redundant. Just as I was about to withdraw it, suddenly there was a sound of footsteps at the door. Then, there was the sound of pushing the door. When I opened my eyes again, Quentin was already standing in front of my bed. The moonlight shone on Quentin's shoulder through the window. His sharp edges and corners also became softer. He leaned down and asked gently, "Ian, what's wrong?" It was less than a minute after sending the message. But he has already arrived. He is really fulfilling his words. He said he would come. Then no matter how late it is, he will come. Perhaps, like me, he didn't sleep this night either. Just because he was afraid that I really needed him. Thinking of this, my heart tightened sharply. It was painful and stuffy. I stayed at Quentin's home like this for half a month. The most interesting thing is waiting for Quentin to come home. He goes into the kitchen to work on his cooking. While I lean against the door and watch him quietly. Occasionally give him a hand. Under the warm yellow light, he combs his back hair, revealing a handsome but somewhat green face. Covered by a layer of soft gauze, it shows a touch of tenderness. At this time, he hasn't graduated from college yet. Compared to the resolute and decisive president he in my previous life, he is now slightly green and immature. This is a time she has never participated in and never known. He occasionally looks up. The corners of his lips curl up gently. The clear love in those eyes can't be hidden. He likes me so much. At this moment, I suddenly realize that in the time I don't know, Quentin really likes me very attentively. My heart suddenly tightened. The emotions in my heart flowed through my whole body along with the blood. Finally, it turned into a long sigh, seeing Quentin's cooking skills getting better day by day. The Song family finally couldn't hold back. I had thought that the Song family wouldn't let Ruth plead guilty and go to prison so easily. But I didn't expect that the Song family would bribe Hannah's agent and identify me as the real culprit. So shameless and despicable. In front of the camera, Mother Song revealed the life experiences of me and Ruth. She cried with tears in her eyes. I really didn't expect that Ian would intentionally hurt others. She has always been a very obedient child. But now, in order to avoid punishment, she actually framed her own younger sister. Although Aru is my own daughter, in fact, she hasn't enjoyed much happiness for a few days. Now she has to be wrongfully imprisoned. Ian really makes me. Ruth shrank in her arms and clumsily wiped away her tears for her. But she let her own tears slide down her cheeks. Mom, don't be sad. My sister must have made a mistake in a moment of confusion. If I can atone for my sister, I am willing to do it for her. As long as she can be filial to you, it's enough. The mother and daughter were extremely pitiful, crying sadly in front of the media. Those who make mistakes must take responsibility. You don't have to bear what you shouldn't bear. Finally, Father Song faced the camera and said righteously, Tina, the Song family has raised you for so many years. I hope you can stand up and atone for your mistakes. As soon as the video was released, there was an uproar on the internet against me. What a white-eyed wolf. A fake daughter enjoyed so much happiness for so many years. But let the biological daughter of the Song family take the blame for her. Are you human? Tina, you poisonous woman. Dare to do it but not dare to admit it. It's really disgusting. Yes, the Song family has been extremely kind to you. You repay kindness with enmity. Pure scum. The scolding continued. My private account was also exposed. Every day, there were countless private messages. Even former classmates called to ask about my situation. For those who cared about me, I replied occasionally. For those who asked me to plead guilty, I directly blocked them. Despite the turmoil outside, I did nothing. No matter how much the Song family makes a fuss, as long as the police don't summon me, I am innocent. So why panic and fall into the trap of self-proof? When Quentin received the news this day, he hurried home. As soon as he opened his mouth, it was, "I can help you." I smiled, no need. I myself, but before I could finish speaking, for some reason, I suddenly remembered an incident that happened in my previous life. A fierce quarrel. But although it is said to be fierce, in fact, it's just because Quentin is too good to me, which makes many people jealous. Some people spread the news of my imprisonment behind my back. There are also a lot of scolding on the internet. But after all, it's just that I am not worthy of Quentin. Quentin wanted to help me get rid of the rumors. He wanted to attend the press conference with me and initiate a lawyer's lawsuit against those who gossip. But I thought it was unnecessary. I had been in prison. Although I had a clear conscience, I didn't want Quentin to be criticized because of me. But this angered Quentin. He coldly questioned me if I had him in my heart and if I regarded him as my husband. But I just felt that cold treatment was better. I thought he was making trouble out of nothing and being unreasonable. That day, there was no light on in the living room. Only the afterglow of the setting sun remained. After being silent for a long time, he chuckled softly and said a sentence gently, "You are innocent in this world. I can't tolerate others pointing fingers at you. Tina, do you understand?" I remained silent and refused to reply to him. When I left, I looked back and could see his lonely figure. At that moment, I felt a bit regretful. I thought, why not just agree to him? It's just a small matter. But I didn't expect that it was the last time I saw him. After his death, I asked myself again and again, why didn't I accompany him? Why didn't I tell him my feelings? With those bunches of lilies, that meticulous care, and that focused gaze. Didn't I really notice that he loved me? I clearly knew. But I am a jerk who takes advantage of love. I was certain that Quentin would accompany me until old age and willfully indulged in his love. But I never soothed his uneasy heart. Until he died. I understood love. But for the belated love, the cruelest thing is that before there is time to confess, before there is time to get close, it is completely lost. There is no chance anymore. Returning to this life. It is a chance given by heaven for me to make up. I don't care about the reserve, shyness, and gradual progress of love. I can't care about them and I can't learn them either. I just want to be with him. Just want to, most want to, still want to. So I tightly hugged Quentin and then kissed his lips. Between our lips and teeth, I gently gasped and said, "Okay, you help me. Give you a reward in advance." Quentin was stunned for a moment. Then he pushed me down on the sofa even more deeply and heavily. 2 hours later. I was so tired that I couldn't get up. But I still tightly hugged Quentin and refused to let go. I looked at him. Clearly so sleepy that I couldn't open my eyes, but still didn't want to close them. I was still a bit afraid that this was a dream. He leaned down and gently kissed my cheek and between my eyebrows. "I am here, Ian. Sleep. I will always be here." I said Finally, I couldn't hold on anymore and fell into darkness. In the darkness, I suddenly woke up. I was wearing a cyan pajama and lying in a black and white bedroom. There was a glass of already cold water on the bedside table and white pills beside it. I looked around. It was deserted and there was no familiar person. My heart suddenly ached. Memories emerged in my mind, scene after scene. Finally, it was fixed on that hoarse voice with electrical current. "Ian, I really, really like you." So it was a dream. I suddenly realized. It was really a beautiful dream. I tightly clutched my chest. My hands and feet were ice cold. As if covered by a net, I was gradually deprived of my right to breathe. Tears fell drop by drop. Ian, what's wrong? A person suddenly pushed open the door and walked up to me. Looking at me in panic, with tears blurring my vision, I raised my hand and wiped away my tears. Finally, I saw the man clearly. Ian, it's okay. I just went out to deal with the Song family's matter. I found the agent bribed by the Song family and also found the cleaner who passed by occasionally that day. He saw that it was Ruth who pushed Hannah down. Ruth has been convicted. The people of the Song family are also being sued by me for framing. Ian, no one will frame you again in the future. The man gently patted my back while telling me everything that happened while I was sleeping. I looked up at him. Gently leaned against his arms. Listening to the clear and powerful heartbeat coming from his chest, I finally smiled. It's okay. I missed you. I gently told him. Quentin, did I tell you? I really like you so much. The man laughed and hugged me tightly. He said, I also like Ian. 20 people who love each other. After many years. Finally told each other their love. Mountains and seas, time and space. Can't stop. The reunion of people who love each other. Quentin's, I am reborn. After I was reborn, the first thing I did was go to the Song family. But I found that the Song family was still harmonious. Tina is still the coolest and smartest goddess in the whole college. Not like the in my previous life who seemed gentle but actually had a heart full of holes. Ian has no sense of security. Prison is too hard. She is also envied and hated. Those prisoners often deliberately torture her in the middle of the night. After she was released from prison, even if she was asleep, as long as there was a little noise, she would be awakened. Then, she couldn't sleep anymore. She would sit there all night. But even so, she could do her work flawlessly during the day. My Ian is fragile snow and also tenacious pine. Seeming that a ray of light can melt it. But in fact, she is indestructible. I love her and admire her. At the freshman ceremony of the school, Tina gave a speech on stage as the president of the student union. I sat under the stage and looked over from afar. The girl was wearing a school uniform and had a ponytail, revealing a beautiful but immature face. She freely showed off her beauty and demonstrated her knowledge, making many people not only fascinated by her appearance but also by her speech. At this time, Ian is the youthful and simple top student in his memory. Tina stood on the podium. The wind blew in front of her, blowing her hair. The sun seemed to favor her and dyed her with a light golden color. In an instant, I suddenly felt that it would be great if time could stay at this moment. His Ian would never accept those hardships. Always stay simple. Laughter is laughter, bitterness is bitterness. She won't be affected by rumors and won't be ridiculed. How great it would be. I already knew that Ruth would have an accident, so I specially installed a surveillance camera in that remote corridor. When I was about to release it, I received Tina's distress message. At that moment, I knew Ian has also returned. I want to know her attitude this time. I want to know how she will deal with the Song family. And this time she refused to take the blame. She left the Song family. I saw her quietly dragging her luggage and walking on the deserted Plane Tree Avenue. When she saw me, she showed a smile. Making me feel well, the sun was so warm that day. I took her home. I pretended to know nothing about everything. After working hard for a long time, I made a bowl of noodles without any good appearance. Seeing her stunned. Guiding her little by little to discover my love for her. Seeing her tremble for me. I should have been happy. But at the moment when I saw her tears, I felt heartache again. Forget it. I thought. It's enough that I love her. Whether she loves me or not, what's the importance? But in the end, she threw herself into my arms, tightly pressed against me, and told me, Quentin, I really like you. At that moment, I only felt flowers blooming all over the sky. I tried hard to hold back the soreness in my eyes and responded to my princess word by word. So do I, Tina, I also really like you. People say that people who love each other will always meet again. Then I think, on the day of reunion, the sun must be warm, sun must be warm, sun must be warm, sun must be warm, sun must be warm.